technical difficulties on the baseline. What's up, everybody? JP SPG here with season 3. Wow. Getting behind myself. Season 3, episode 2 of the baseline.
It's hard to comprehend that it's September.
They all blend together.
It's September. It
doesn't feel like it.
I was chatting with our buddy Pete Connors yesterday, and we were both just kind of like, the NHL playoffs are still going on. Baseball just started, and we're going into playoffs here in just a couple weeks. And it feels like March 125th at this point. Not quite as bad as it was when we were, really locked down in isolating ourselves and practicing extreme physical distancing. But obviously there's a lot of caution and concern still going on. Life is not back to normal yet, but we're getting there, I think. And I hope we're trending in the right direction. But yes, technical difficulties. So some things. 2020 or not, some things don't change.
It's all right, though. We're going to make up for it tonight. We got a big show ahead of us tonight. Stick around for later. I can't wait. It's one of my favorite the seventh inning stretches that we've done so far. You always hear about the borderline Hall of Famers. We make the arguments, the cases for the Fred McGriffs and
Donnie Baseballs
of the world, Jim Cott, guys like that. You hear those cases made quite often. Tonight we're going to talk about guys that otherwise wouldn't even get talked about, but had absolutely stellar major league careers. Just fell short of those mythical thresholds. Comment if you guys got somebody in mind that we can talk about. We want to hear it. But tonight's our first official induction into the Hall of the Very Good.
That's good, right?
That's good. That's good, right?
First, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this show, Delta Lake Inn out in Rome. A visit to Delta Lake Inn is about more than just the amazing cuisine. They've created a restaurant that incorporates all the things that you love, and they can't wait for you to join them. Join them for indoor, outdoor dining in an environment full of history and character. Schedule your family gathering. Reserve the banquet hall for your wedding or any event, or have them cater any special occasion at a location of your choice. With all the regulations and concerns about physical distancing and all that, they will come to you. They will bring their delicious food to you. They will cater your event at your home.
Really good
another
food.
Location, really good food. It's an experience built on making cherished memories with the ones you enjoy most. Check out their website at deltalakeinn.com. Give them a call at 315-533-7710. You can even email them at info@deltalakeinn.com if you have any questions about events in the modern landscape of the way things are right now. They are still open for events. They will safely host you and your family or your friends for a very, very nice event with delicious food in an awesome setting. Check them out. They're located at 8524 Fish Hatchery Road in Rome, New York, right next to the dam at Delta Lake Inn. Awesome setting. The outdoor dining, phenomenal, especially this time of year, summertime, coming into fall. Great time to sit outside on a nice end of summer or early fall day and have a nice meal or a drink. And check it out. It's worth the trip out there. Delta Lake, again, that's 315-533-7710, deltalakeinn.com. You won't be disappointed, I can promise you that.
Outstanding. What do you got for this date in baseball history? Well, actually, we're not going to do it this date in baseball history.
It is a special day.
We're just going to celebrate today's special day.
It is a special day. It is Roberto Clementi Day, September 9th. And what a guy to honor, not just what he did on the field.
Literally, this day has nothing to do with what he did on the field.
No idea, why they picked this date, honestly. It's not his birthday. I'm sure there was some event or some purpose to picking this date. And maybe somebody who's listening can, throw a message in the chat and educate us a little bit, because I would love to know a little bit more about Roberto Clementi Day. But what an amazing contributor to the game and just humanity in general, not just what he did on the field, which was amazing, but just a contributor to charity and to equality and, speaking up against injustice, and just one of the most iconic characters in the game of baseball and beyond the game of baseball. And it is great that they are honoring him. And what they're doing is, and they do this every single year, the Pittsburgh Pirates all wear his number 21, on Roberto Clementi Day. All players of Puerto Rican descent are permitted to wear number 21 on Roberto Clementi Day. I believe anybody who wants to honor him can. And the Pirates do a number of charitable things. This year, they supported a number of small businesses that are affected by the coronavirus pandemic, as far as distributing masks and, helping, contributing to these businesses that are really struggling, because it is, especially for your mom and pops, it is a tough year, and people are just trying to keep their heads above water and get by. And it's good to see that Roberto Clementi's cause is continuing posthumously.
Yes.
With the honoring him and, assisting in helping small businesses and others. So it's a great way to keep the memory of Roberto Clementi alive. So September 9th, Roberto Clementi Day.
Roberto Clementi, although I never got to see him play, may have been one of the first jerseys I ever owned as a kid. I was obsessed with him. I read a memoir about Roberto Clementi when I was maybe in 3rd or 4th grade. Died assisting in a humanitarian effort to earthquake-stricken Nicaragua, December 31st, 1972, I believe. Just a few months after collecting his 3,000th and last base hit. Roberto Clementi is to the Latin ball players and the Latin community what Jackie Robinson is to the black community.
Absolutely.
And again, although it has nothing to do with what he did on the field, what he did on the field was absolutely magic. He's a top 3 or 4 right fielder, if not the best right fielder of all time. Defensively was astounding. One of the best arms. You go watch Roberto Clementi throwing people out from the corner at third base. It's a beautiful thing. But 3,000 hits and all the other accolades, an all-star in every facet. But we celebrate this day because of what he meant to humanity.
Exactly.
Not what he meant to baseball.
He spent 18 years in right field for the Pittsburgh Pirates, one of the all-time greats, Hall of Famer. But, we're still sitting here talking about his contributions. In just the circumstances around the way that he died, like you said. He died doing charitable work. A little bit more info on what the Pittsburgh Pirates organization did to celebrate and promote Roberto Clementi's legacy today is they worked with small businesses and nonprofits, helping those most impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. The Pirates organization hosted a meal and mask distribution. They worked with the Humane Animal Rescue to host a pet supplies shopping spree. And they visited first responders to thank them for their dedication to the community.
Outstanding. Tip of the cap, Pittsburgh Pirates.
Absolutely, tip of the cap.
Major League Baseball each year awards the Roberto Clementi Award. And the Roberto Clementi Award is an award given annually. It's a recognition of an MLB player who best represents the game through extraordinary character, community involvement, philanthropy, and positive contributions both on and off the field. And if that is not a synopsis of what Roberto Clementi was as a man, I don't know what would be. So happy Roberto Clementi Day, everyone out there.
That's a true hero right there. That's a true hero.
Roberto Clementi gets a charge.
Absolutely. Tip of the cap, a charge. He gets all. He gets a he's good, right, too.
He's good, right. And from celebrating one legacy of one player, since our last show, we did lose 2 more iconic players in the game. I'm talking about, of course, losing Hall of Famers Lou Brock and terrific Tom Seaver, one of the all-time best pitchers to ever play the game. And that's not taking anything away from Lou Brock, who was a very prolific player in his own right.
Yeah, one of the best speedsters.
Tom Seaver might be on the Mount Rushmore of all-time pitchers.
Absolutely.
So, Lou Brock, Lou Brock was a prolific base stealer, as I said. He retired with 938 of them, and it only took Rickey Henderson like 3 years to pass that. I remember Rickey Henderson passing it maybe 1992, right around there, and he wasn't that far into his career. But before that, you're talking Maury Wills and Lou Brock and Jackie Robinson. These were the guys that were recognized as the base stealers. But in addition to it, he scored 1,600 runs and 900 RBIs. Just an all-around solid player. He's a member of the 3,000 hit club, and like we said, he is a member of the Hall of Fame. 6-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion. Tom Seaver, 109.9 wins above replacement. That's really, really, really good. A lifetime ERA of 2.86. 20 years in the show as a starter. 2.86. He did manage to register one career save, but in 4,783 innings pitched, he racked up an amazing total of 3,640 strikeouts. And that's really, really good. That's a lot. So we lost two legends this week. So tip the cap to Tom Seaver and Lou Brock. Tom Seaver, an unfortunate case, he stopped making public appearances, I believe 4 or 5 years ago. Stopped making public appearances due to dementia. The family had cut him off because he really wasn't himself anymore. And I guess you're happy to not see the man suffer any longer, but of course the game lost simply an icon.
Absolutely.
So, tip of the cap to Tom Seaver and Lou Brock.
Lou Brock, obviously a huge inspiration to Rickey Henderson, and we love Rickey Henderson here on the baseline, but Rickey loves Rickey as well, and he had a lot of very nice things to say about the legacy of Lou Brock.
Was a symbol of great base stealing, but today I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Rickey.
And he did have a lot of nice things to say. I don't have his quote in front of me after the passing of Lou Brock, but those names will be forever connected. I guess when I think of Rickey breaking the record and just some of the most amazing, prolific base stealers, as you said, the game has ever seen. No doubt about it.
Dave, checking in. What's up? Mr. Offsite Statistician. Dave, May 1st, 1991, Rickey Henderson passed Lou Brock. And I believe another milestone might have happened that day. Maybe Nolan Ryan's 5,000th strikeout. Something happened on the exact same day, or a no-hitter.
His seventh no-hitter, possibly. Dave, correct us, please.
Yeah, check that out. Something with Nolan Ryan and Rickey Henderson on that day. Dave says it was about 12 years that it took Rickey Henderson to pass that mark. But he did it pretty quick. Anyway, we lost two greats. So tip of the cap to those two, and Roberto Clementi Day. Awesome to celebrate our heritage. Because sometimes when you're a fan of certain teams, celebrating the present isn't too easy.
Dave says, nope, that was later. I have that in my head, too. It must have been within a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Same season or something.
It happens.
I don't know.
The present is abysmal if you are a fan of the two New York teams. But not if you're a fan of the third New York team.
There is a New York team playing their home games in the state of New York that is on fire. One of the hottest teams in the game.
Anchor Bar and Duff's, Niagara Falls, University of Buffalo. I don't know what's going on, but something's got
Bills
into
Mafia.
These
maybe Bills Mafia
Buffalo
fever.
Blue Jays. The Buffalo Blue Jays are on an absolute tear. I believe they won 14 of their last 19 games. They've overtaken the New York Yankees, who have been struggling in their last 20.
Blue Jays Mafia. Does that make sense?
It does. The Buffalo Blue Jays actually sounds pretty good.
It does.
They'd have to build them a significantly better stadium, I guess, than
I've seen some
Rogers Center,
I've
Skydome.
seen some really cool Buffalo baseball shirts floating around out there. I think you actually sent me a link to one of them. And I ended up going on a couple websites and just kind of browsing through what the options are out there. And there's some really cool Buffalo baseball with customized logos, kind of combining Buffalo sports and the Blue Jays. Really cool stuff. But
my daughter Sophia checking in.
At the expense of the New York Yankees, unfortunately for us. But, it's time that we give credit to teams like the Blue Jays and the Rays, because all I've heard for the last couple weeks is, wow, the Yankees are terrible. And, yeah, they are having, especially the last month has been
we've talked about
pretty atrocious. But we got to give credit to the Rays. We got to give credit to what the Blue Jays are doing, with these young players. Really good management, especially in the case of the Rays. Kevin Cash has proven himself year after year. They deserve to be where they are in the standings. There's no doubt about it. The Yankees deserve to be exactly where they are in the standings. And the Yankees are, I believe, coming into tonight's game with the Blue Jays, are 21-21. The Yankees are 7-0 against the Boston Red Sox this season. So 14-21 against the rest of MLB at this point. That's not good, right?
No, that's
not good, right? And of course, the injuries play a factor in it, but I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm not going to be that fan. Don't be that fan. I'm not going to sit here and say, it's because of the injuries. Judge has been out for almost the whole season. Stanton's hurt. What else is new, I mean, last year, same thing. Aaron Boone managed this team up, and they had a very good season despite the injuries. So I'm not going to sit here and make injury excuses.
Well, just because you're stating a fact does not necessarily mean that you're making an excuse.
True.
I mean, the facts are the facts.
I'm not going to deny it. It doesn't.
The Yankees started Jordy Mercer at shortstop in multiple games this year.
Yeah.
And Eric Kratz, 41-year-old Eric Kratz, has caught games for the New York Yankees this year. Estevan Florial, who was about 7th or 8th on the outfield depth chart coming into the season, has played in that outfield.
You have Kyle Higashioka starting half the time.
Mike King has gotten spot starts for the New York Yankees.
We got to get Mike King on the show.
We do got to get Mike King on the show.
He has family in the central New York Utica area where
what's
we
up,
are.
Mike King?
We got to get in touch with them. And actually, they reached out to me, some of his cousins, and asked if we wanted to get Mike King on the show, and I just said, are you crazy? Of course we would. We'd love to talk to Mike King, even if it was just a short interview,
Yeah.
Regular season, off season, you name it. We will make time for you, Mike King.
Absolutely, Mike King. We'll come up with the King's Court.
There we go.
All right, the King's Court. Whole new segment. You can call in weekly, 2-3 minutes, whatever you want to, whatever's grinding Mike King's gears. That's what we want to hear about in the King's Court. And that's not a knock against Mike King, but at the beginning of the season, Mike King's not on that list of people that is going to come in and play a factor on that team. That's not what you're relying on coming into the beginning of the season. It's just not. You're not relying on having to start Jordy Mercer at shortstop because Gleyber Torres is out, or Eric Kratz because Gary Sanchez has just been abysmal.
And that was actually going to be my next point when you brought up Eric Kratz is, despite all the injuries, despite Jordy Mercer, despite Mike King, any of the fill-ins, the replacement players, if you want to call them that the Yankees have had to put in there. If Gary Sanchez was batting even .220 right now with 10 home runs and playing average defense, they'd be, I'm not going to say in first place, but they would be close to, they would be a lot closer than the Rays than they are right now. Stanton being in the lineup, Judge being in the lineup, Gleyber missing all that time, that all helps. Sanchez being not horrendous, I guess, because it is there is no word for how bad he has been this year. And I think does Dave have him on his fantasy team? I think he does, right? Dave, you have him on your fantasy team, right?
Cursed him.
Yeah, you cursed him. Thanks.
Stick to the Indians, man.
Man, that's tough. That is tough because phenomenal young talent when he's not. I don't know.
Here's what I'm going to wrap up with.
I'm speechless on the whole Gary Sanchez thing. I really am. It is.
I think that he needs to be a first baseman.
It boggles my mind.
I think they need to take the pressure of catching away from him, handling the staff. And if you listen to AJ Burnett, my apologies. I had him on the brain from what we were doing earlier. If you listen to Garrett Cole says that there's nobody on the team or no catcher that he's ever thrown to that works harder than Gary Sanchez. And that's saying something. And you don't just think that that's fluff, like a fluff piece for the New York Times or for the Post, for the back page of the Post.
Garrett Cole is not shy about
He's
speaking.
Not.
He's
not.
He might be quiet on certain things, but he's not going to go throwing, fallacies out there.
Not that hyperbole.
Yeah.
He's not going to call him the hardest worker he's ever worked with. But he's 6'4". He's 260 pounds. That's not very easy to play that position at that size over a long period of time. Ask Joe Mauer. Joe Mauer was a good catcher, an above-average defender. Awesome. Won 3 batting titles as a catcher. Broke down very quickly. Gary Sanchez is going to be better suited, and I don't think that he's going to – I think that he's a good athlete. I really do. He's agile for a guy that is that big.
And he's slimmed down.
But he's not a catcher. He's got problems, and this is just from just watching so many games and so many reps. He's got problems with speed in the dirt. So fast pitches in the dirt beat him. He gets caught between that backhand and getting the chest down in front of it and blocking it and keep in front of him. He gets caught in between those two moves, and he gets beat a lot. But that being said, he's got a cannon for an arm, and he's very nimble back there. He just misses balls. I think that he can make an outstanding first baseman at that size with those glove skills that you have to have being a catcher, being able to frame the ball and being able to get down on the ball. I bet you that with some really hard work, if he really truly works as hard as Garrett Cole says he does, with some hard work, he can be an above-average first baseman. You remember Albert Pujols came into the league, and he was a negative defender. And he turned himself into a very solid Major League third baseman first, and then into a solid Major League first baseman.
He did.
So it can happen.
It can.
And I think that would alleviate a lot of pressure off of that young man. We've never seen a Gary Sanchez that has been uber consistent.
No, it's
the
spurts.
stats.
He hits 20 home runs in a month.
The stats compile, and he ends up leading All-American League catchers in home runs and RBIs. Okay? But they compile, and they come in bunches. So it's not as if we're talking about Steady Eddie here. He hasn't been that guy. But what he has given you over the course of a season for his career, that's not just something you toss away. Anybody that can hit a baseball that far, you don't just toss away. You work on it. You don't send them down to the minors. You don't give them less playing time. You work on it. You work through it. You drop them down in the order. You take pressure off them. You work around it.
I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know what the answer is either, but I know that it's not just throw this guy on the scrap heap. He's too good of a player to throw this guy on the scrap heap.
I don't know what the
don't be that
is.
fans out there.
DH has not worked for him this year.
No, I think he needs to be involved in the game.
He is actually 0 for 11 as a DH this season. Ironically, as a pinch hitter, he's 2 for 3.
That's probably his best splits right there as a pinch hitter.
Oh, by far. His OPS is like 1,600.
We're not
at bats.
I'm not so low on Gary Sanchez as a lot of these fans are out there. I think that it's a cause worthy of fixing. I don't think it's something you just ollie oxen free. All right, we're done, man. Let's wave the white flag and you go your way, we'll go ours. I think that's still a franchise-type guy, a franchise-type bat. I think it can be. Do I think he's going to go out there and hit 317? No. But he can walk. Yeah, he strikes out a lot, but he can get on base and he can drive in runs. And that's a good cog to have in a lineup. But I think his value could increase as a first baseman. I think it would go the opposite of the Joe Mauer way. Joe Mauer was the most valuable catcher in baseball as a catcher. And he put up inferior numbers to what he did catching at first base, and he became a liability at first base. Because you got to get production out of that position. And the Twins weren't getting it. And I think it would be the exact opposite for Gary Sanchez. I think the production you're getting now out of Sanchez would be exponentially better were you to take that pressure, even 50, 60 games of pressure off of him and let him play first base. And that's it. That's where I'm ending on the Yankees. It's
anything is
everything
worth a
else
try
is
at this
abysmal.
point with Gary Sanchez because there's I hope nowhere as a Yankees fan nowhere to go but up compared to where he has been at this season.
There is no place else to go but up.
But very rough stretch here for the Yankees, and we are staring at a season where the Yankees started out, I forget what the exact record was, maybe 8-0, 7-0, 8-0. And even in expanded playoffs, they very well could be missing the postseason at this point.
They're out
very,
right now.
very realistic possibility, if not likely at this point. So it should be interesting to see. It's crazy. You know, we've had less than a month and a half of baseball, I guess, about 6 weeks of baseball, and we're 3 weeks away from the postseason now. Trade deadline just happened last week. Some interesting moves there, too, that we should probably talk about. But this compact season.
My other daughter.
We're just a couple weeks
Marley.
away from the postseason, and the Yankees are certainly not trending in the right direction toward making the expanded postseason. So we talked about Gary Sanchez and his struggles. Let's talk about somebody who is doing the absolute opposite of struggling. Honestly, one of the most remarkable runs as a pitcher I have seen. And I think Dave's going to like this one. Shane Bieber. Let's talk about what Shane Bieber is doing. Wow.
On this week's edition of That's Good, Right?
And people still call him Justin, too. I shared that clip with you guys the other night. And I forget who it even was. I think it might have been the Cardinals game. They were just talking about how amazing Shane Bieber has been, and they called him Justin Bieber.
Not Justin.
And they even threw a "That's Good, Right" in there. I heard that, and I was like, wow, that's a clip worthy of the baseline right there, throwing in a Justin Bieber and "That's Good, Right." But the run that Shane Bieber is on is just... It's incredible, and it's awesome to see. Dave, you must be super pumped about this
He's
kid.
7-0, 1.25 ERA with 94 strikeouts to 14 walks.
The strikeout numbers are historic.
94 strikeouts to 14 walks with a 1.25 ERA that's dominant. Let's make our case right now for Shane Bieber MVP, because you're going to hear an awful lot of chatter. Should he continue? Well, I mean, you should hear it anyway. You should hear it anyway. He shouldn't even need to continue on this path. You should hear the MVP chatter anyway, but you're going to hear
how can you not?
an awful lot of chatter.
How is he not the front runner for MVP right now?
I totally agree with you. Totally agree. So Shane Bieber MVP in addition to Cy Young. What do you think, Dave? Talking about the Indians, pal. One of the highlights, I mean, there is some, we talked about pitching last show, but there's some really good pitching performances going on this year. The resurgence of Yu Darvish out there just dominating people. Of course, Shane Bieber and the rest of the Indians. But Tristan Mckenzie.
Having
Zach
a great start
Plesac.
to
I mean,
his career.
who's Mike Clevenger?
He's a San Diego Padre.
Who's that?
He's a San Diego Padre at this point.
It's like they traded their ace and didn't skip a beat. That's a dangerous team right there. It's a dangerous team.
It seems like it happens all the time in Cleveland.
Well, we were not so far behind last year when we talked about watch out for the San Diego Padres. Do you remember, Baseline? Do you remember? We told you. You need to watch out for the San Diego Padres, and you need to watch out for the Chicago White Sox. And sure enough, in this abrupted season, you're watching out for these two teams. The Chicago White Sox have been on a tear themselves, respectively, in the last few weeks. Luis Robert, clear-cut frontrunner for AL Rookie of the Year. Oh, I don't have me on. Clear-cut frontrunner for AL Rookie of the Year.
Another team that we talk about frequently is the Oakland A's, too.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
What they're doing. You know, I've been singing the praises of Bob Melvin for
you love
years.
Bob
I do. First place, second best record in the AL right now. They're a darn good team.
They are.
And they watch out for them in the postseason.
There's one thing that I would like to see for them. I mean, there's a few. But if there's one thing that I'd like to see turn around, we highlighted Gary Sanchez's struggles and what that could have done potentially for the Yankees at this point in time had he turned it around. How good could Oakland be right now if Matt Olson wasn't hitting 188? I mean, he's got 11 homers. He's got 29 ribbies, but how good could they be if he wasn't hitting 188? But there they are, sitting in the playoff spot out there in first place in the AL West.
It should be interesting to see what the short season and the small sample size, because even the full season is a small sample size by baseball standards.
I like the 16-team playoff format made up for that.
Really interesting to see, though. I'm not even talking about that, but what it's going to do for player values going forward. You know what I mean? That player that gets out to that ridiculous hot stretch. Look at what Bellinger did last year at the beginning of the year. And, yeah, he had a phenomenal year throughout the season, but just the dominance that he was batting over 400. He was leading the league in home runs. You know, the short sample size aspect of this season is going to be really, really interesting to see what it does for players' trade values and for their contract negotiations coming up. So many anomalies, you know. And we sit here and we talk about Gary Sanchez and how terrible he is, and we sit here and we talk about Matt Olson batting 180 or whatever his batting average is at this point. But you know, over the course of a full season, I don't know if it would with Sanchez at this point, with how terrible he's been in the batter's box and behind the plate. But you know, in the course of the full season, those things tend to average themselves out. You know, the law of averages over 162 game season, it always balances to some degree, you know, over a season, maybe even potentially 2 seasons at some point. But this is going to really, really affect some values of players when they're going into their contract negotiations.
I can start naming off players like crazy. James Paxton.
There are going to be some bargains, and there are going to be some players who in 8 weeks just, you know, doubled their value in
Robbie
their
Ray,
next contract.
James Paxton. Those are 2 that jump right off the page at me that are in walk years and absolutely needed to perform this year. James Paxton, really, with the potential that's there and how hard he throws and the stuff that he has, just the raw stuff, and how he shows glimpses of being dominant, all he had to do was stay on the field this year. That's it. They could have chalked it up. That's it. They could have chalked up a terrible season to, hey, you know, maybe not enough prep time. Maybe the crammed schedule got him off his routine. Who knows? They could have chalked it up to anything, and he still could have got paid. His agent could have gone there and wheeled and dealed, and he could have got paid.
He could have gone out there with a...
He's on the DL.
He could have gone out there with a 4.5 ERA. 4.
And still got paid.
ERA. If he stayed healthy, he's getting a nice contract.
$80 million next year. Hyun-Jin Ryu, $80 million contract. Okay? James Paxton could have signed that contract. No problem. The one thing you can't do if you're James Paxton is not go on the field. Terrible. It's just, I feel bad for the guy in a way. I'm not saying that he's hurt on purpose or anything like that, because I know he's not. Nobody would do that. But it's just unfortunate that in a walk year, when you really got to go out there and really just stay on the field, you couldn't even do that. Robbie Ray, on the other hand, if Robbie Ray can figure out a way, I mean, he strikes guys out. Robbie Ray a few weeks ago became the 2nd fastest left-hander to 1,000 strikeouts ever. I believe Clayton Kershaw was first. Second,
Robbie Ray, now of the Buffalo Blue Jays.
The Buffalo Blue Jays, yes. If he can figure out a way to get those walks down and not have that one blow-up inning, Robbie Ray's like the best 3-inning pitcher in the league. He starts off like a house of fire. You hit that 4th inning with Robbie Ray, and it's over with. He walks the first 2 guys, gives up a little bloop single, walks another guy, and he just puts himself in trouble. If Robbie Ray can figure that out, he's going to get paid too, because that's another guy with tremendous stuff from the left-hand side of the plate, or left-hand side. There's so many guys that this is going to affect.
Bob Taylor checking in too, and related to the Oakland A's talk, Tommy La Stella, nice pickup for them at the deadline, and A.J. Puck, one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, is scheduled to come off the IL soon, and you know, what a great addition to the bullpen there, you know, for this season, for an ad after the season from
Tommy La Stella. That's
within the organization.
It's a sneaky under the radar move. Plays multiple positions in the infield, plays them well.
That is
Bob
what
Melvin,
Oakland
the
does.
Oakland
That's your
Bob
money
Melvins.
ball. That's their big money ball pickup, at the deadline. You pick up those useful, valuable guys who just kind of solidify your team and fill in the gaps. And
there's maybe 2 other teams that have adopted that mentality over and over and over through the years. The Tampa Bay Rays jump off as one of them. But I just can't understand why these teams don't do it. And then you got your teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates and Kansas City Royals who could absolutely do it. They could lock up that 1-2 guys and use their youth to make trades, and then they make trades like, Chris Archer for Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow.
Austin Meadows, another guy having a horrendous season, by the way.
Yeah, well, you're talking about a young guy. He's on the field.
That plays right into my talk about the sample size.
Exactly.
If this was a 162-game season, Austin Meadows by the end of the year would be batting .250 with probably close to 30 home runs.
Exactly, because he's going to have that stretch where he's a house of fire, and it balances itself out. But you're right. This whole shortened season is going to cost a lot of guys some money, and it's going to make a lot of guys some money. Teoscar Hernandez, Will Myers. Well, Will Myers just signed a pretty significant contract.
Will Myers having a great year.
But having a bust-out year, Will Myers.
Having a great year.
You know what? That promise that San Diego must have made to Will Myers, it's now coming to fruition. You see this guy in a good lineup, and that's it. Look at him. He's a bust-out guy. We've been hearing about Will Myers.
He's got the pedigree.
For like 4 or 5 years.
Speaking of Tampa and Kansas City, former top prospect in both of those organizations.
Correct.
I believe he was in the Wade Davis trade way back in the day at one point when he changed teams, Kansas City, Tampa. And then he ended up with San Diego. I forget what the trade was that brought him to San Diego. But, largely a disappointment compared to what the expectations were. But, post-type sleeper right there. He's having a phenomenal year. He's got some speed. He can steal some bases, and he's got a lot of pop. And if he continues to trend in the right direction and keeps those strikeouts down, which is what he's doing this year, then, he's a middle-of-the-order bat. He's a stud. And maybe San Diego was the perfect spot to cultivate that. Building a team of young players around him and eventually giving him a good, solid lineup.
Whatever promise
guys
San
getting
Diego
on base in front of him, and
whatever they made to
guys
him,
batting him in.
Be patient. We got the cavalry coming. Man, that's a good team. It's a good team out there, San Diego.
I still don't understand why they signed Eric Hosmer a couple of years ago, but Dave's favorite player, Eric Hosmer.
He loves Eric Hosmer. But trending in the right direction is he. He's moving. And if you need to get moving, you can check out our boys at EJA Moving Company. EJA, let's get moving. Why does it keep going to you?
Camera likes me.
It doesn't want to go to me. EJA Moving, let's get moving. Professional moving services, residential, commercial, long distance, specialty moves, packing services, and storage. They are your moving specialists. You can call and get an estimate, or you can get them at ejamoving.com. 315-335-0516. When it comes time to move, let EJA help you get moving. They are located at 9772 River Road in Marcy, New York. Let them do the heavy work for you. Then you can have all the fun of moving, putting stuff back together, and all the fun. But let them do all the grunt work for you.
Why not?
Give
they
EJA
do it all, and they are the best.
A call.
EJA Moving for all your moving needs. Again, shout out to our sponsor, Delta Lake Inn. Check out their website, deltalakeinn.com, for your indoor, outdoor dining, events, catering, you name it. Beautiful setting there in the dam right there on Delta Lake, and a gorgeous, gorgeous setting to have a nice meal. There's an event coming up I want to talk about as well that is near and dear to our hearts here at the Baseline, and that is the Connors Way annual 5K run walk. It is a virtual event this year. The last couple of years has been held up in Hinckley, walking the trails that Connor Linsky used to jog and enjoy right near his house. Gorgeous, gorgeous setting. And it's unfortunate that not everybody can come up and join Connor's Way in person this year. However, we are still holding a virtual event for Connor's Way. You can check out the website, connorsway.com, CONNORSWAY.com. You can still register right up until the 22nd of September at noon. And it's a $20 registration fee. You can do your 5-mile run walk at any point over the week of September 15th to September 22nd. The week-long event ends on September 22nd, which would have been Connor Linsky's 21st birthday. The journey does not end here in this place, nor on this day. The journey continues. And a little bit of background on this event and what this is all about is Connor Linsky was tragically involved in a drunk driver hit him as he was walking back to his campsite after a concert at Darien Lake 2 years ago in the summer of 2018. And so unfortunate that such a wonderful, brilliant young person was taken from us. But we have chosen to continue the journey, and we will make sure that we honor Connor in the best way possible. And where your donation goes is to scholarships that have, for students that have the similar goals that Connor had. Connor wanted to be a rural doctor and help communities like Hinckley, New York, small towns that may not have access to the modern medicine facilities that many people that live in cities or near cities are used to. And with the Connor's Way event and donations, over the last couple of years, there have been several scholarships handed out to very, very deserving, worthy recipients, to the point where it has gotten very, very tough for the board to choose and narrow it down, just because there are so many brilliant people out there that are deserving of this scholarship award. So please check out connorsway.com for more information on the event. You can read a whole bunch more about this amazing event and the scholarships that are being awarded to very, very deserving recipients. Please consider participating in the virtual event, as I said, September 15th to September 22nd. And you can get all that info right on their website. Check out their Facebook page as well. Just search for Connor's Way. And very, very appreciative of any help that anybody can contribute towards keeping Connor's memory and goal alive and helping others achieve their goals. So please consider connorsway.com.
Tip of the cap.
Tip of the cap.
Connor's Way.
Standing ovation. This is the shirt from last year's Connor's Way event.
I love that logo.
Yeah, very well done logo. The shirts for this year's event look awesome too. They're also available for a small donation, and you can check that out on the website as well. It's more of a Kelly green. You know, I talk about how I like the Oakland A's Kelly green uniforms, and it's that type of color this year. I love the blue as well, but yeah, this year's shirt looks really sharp, and check it out.
Yeah,
please.
Shoot us a message at the baseline if you're looking for more info on Connor's Way, or go check it out. The link is on our page today, and I'll make sure I post the link up here in the comments for this show. So go check it out. It's an awesome cause. Speaking of donations, let's do that. So many. Steve Cohen. The word on Steve Cohen. According to Charles Gasparino of Fox Business, Steve Cohen and the Mets are putting the finishing touches on a $2.35 billion sale of the Mets. Steve Cohen, the hedge fund manager from Great Neck, New York, grew up a Mets fan and now is going to purchase the New York Mets ahead of the Alex Rodriguez and J-Lo group. And if that doesn't sound like the most mettiest headline ever.
Cohen has been trying to buy them for, what, a year?
Lifelong Mets fan buys Mets, pulling the rug out from J-Lo and A-Rod. What? That's so Metty. But maybe, good things are on the horizon for the Mets. It's not to say that they've been terrible all of these years because, they were good in spite of themselves a lot.
Yeah, they made the World
in spite
Series
of being so Metty, they were pretty good. But the Wilpons have stood in the way for a very long time, stood in the way of progress, stood in the way of being smart and trading players that you had control over to get more org control players,
keeping guys like Omar Minaya,
San Diego Padres,
keeping guys like Omar Minaya around.
Well, even the Brody Van Wagenen situation, where Brody Van Wagenen represents people on your team. One of your aces, Noah Syndergaard, he was his agent. You don't take a guy's agent from your team and make him your GM. That's not the way it works. It's a conflict of interest, and it proved to be. He hasn't been the most. I mean, we were fans of him, the way he was interacting with the fans and things of that nature, trying to make a splash, but he hasn't been that brilliant of a GM up until this point. But maybe things will change when Stephen Cohen comes in, and I wish the Mets luck. I do. Mets fans, I know many Mets fans out there are really looking. It would be like a Knicks fan celebrating the loss of James Dolan.
We joke around about the Mets all the time.
The Mets might not be so Metty.
I have nothing
with Steve
against
Cohen.
The Mets. I sympathize. I feel
no, but they are Metty.
There's just one thing after another.
You couldn't make up stories.
This whole sale
about
thing,
the Mets.
This whole sale thing is just another Metty chapter in the Metty book.
It's a Metty chapter that might be coming to a very Metty end.
It has just been a circus. It really has. And I don't know if you saw, but A-Rod and Jennifer Lopez, they guaranteed that the Mets would win a World Series within 10 years if Jennifer Lopez was the controlling owner. Jennifer Lopez being the controlling owner of the Mets, they guaranteed that they would win a World Series within 10 years.
Listen, all right, all those good teams in the 90s, 2000s that they fielded, if they couldn't do it, Jenny from the block ain't doing it, okay? I don't see it. You can't guarantee a World Series.
Even 5 years ago.
There's only one team, and they did it twice. One team.
5 years ago.
One team can guarantee a World Series.
Daniel Murphy's ridiculous torrid run in the postseason when they beat the Cubs the year before the Cubs ended up going on to win the World Series. They've been there. They've been on the cusp a few times. It's not every year. It doesn't happen often, but they've been there.
You can't tell me that Jennifer Lopez is the saving grace in that whole deal. I would be more comfortable with it if you told me that it was because A-Rod was going to be there. I would be more comfortable with that statement. A-Rod's a baseball guy. He probably knows a lot about org development. I would bet he's a smart guy. He doesn't always portray being a smart guy in the booth. He comes out with some really stupid statements sometimes, but I mean, he is generally known for his baseball accoutrement. But J-Lo? Really? J-Lo's the difference maker there with that? I don't know.
They got absolutely trashed on social media for publicly complaining about – it almost came off as whining that we didn't get the thing we wanted. And we're in the middle of a pandemic here. And,
Go about the Pirates.
There were people that were just destroying them with their kind of entitled – we didn't get a chance to buy the – baseball team we really wanted, and a lot of people were putting things in real life perspective. I'll say when Jennifer Lopez put out some tweet about how she was so sad and disappointed that it looked like her bid for the Mets wasn't going to be accepted. Metty.
That is so Metty. Really, Mets fans, I'm pulling for you out there. We are. You know what we haven't done last two shows? We haven't done a 3 up, 3 down. You got anybody that people should be watching out there for the last 19 games or so in fantasy?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot now.
Yeah,
huh?
Why not? I mean, you're the waiver wire genius. I know you have a multitude of guys on your radar right now. So
we've already
let us know who you've put the little star next to in Yahoo.
We've already kind of talked about a lot of the guys, and most of these guys are already owned. You know what I mean? But just in general, kind of the fantasy steals this year. You look at Will Myers, and Justin Bieber was a high pick, but wow, nobody expected this. Talk about up. And I know those are kind of Captain Obvious type answers, but on the flip side of the coin, you have some Captain Obvious with Gary Sanchez. He's a high pick. One of the top catchers taken, if not the top catcher, in many cases. It's so hard to predict. Baseball, and I know I keep coming back to this, and it might sound like a circular conversation at this point, but the sample size issue in a short season like this, it's impossible to predict. You know what I mean? Myers could go out there and be terrible for the rest of the season. Gary Sanchez could go on one of his tears. I find it highly unlikely at this point, but you don't know. But I'll throw out this one out there for a 3-up, and the reason why this comes to top of mind is because I have him on my fantasy team, and he pitched today is Corbin Burns. I know you're a big fan of Corbin Burns, but
I got burnt twice by Corbin Burns.
He had a heck of a performance today in the 19-0 victory that the Brewers had today. He ended up pitching 7 shutout innings with just 1 hit allowed and 11 strikeouts, no walks. And he's really coming into his own. He's had a number of good starts in a row. I highly doubt anybody that's paying attention has him out on their league's waiver wire. But, that's an obvious go get him, grab him. You mentioned Tristan Mckenzie. That's another guy that I had picked up that is, he's had some really, really good starts, and he's had some okay starts. He has not had a bad start since he got called up to the major leagues. Just another one of those Cleveland Indians starting pitchers that just looks like he's got it, And he hadn't pitched in 2 years before this season in a competitive game. And it's good to see a kid like that, who was once a very, very high thought of prospect, still was, but, 2 years of not playing competitively, you lose a little bit of that luster, and rightfully so, because who knows? You're a pitcher. You need to keep that arm going. You have a major injury. That's obviously a huge concern for a young pitcher. But props to Mckenzie, too, for what he's doing for Cleveland right now, too. A couple of really good young arms right there that might be available on a 10-team league waiver wire. It's possible. If you need pitching, go look for him for sure.
SPG, that was expertly done right there. I don't know. That's wonderful.
Can we get another boo for Gary Sanchez? Chris Bryant is another one. He's another down. We'll throw that in there.
This son of a bitch is throwing a 2-hit shutout. He's shaking me off. You believe that shit?
He's having a pretty rough season. Injuries and just lack of performance overall. So there's your impromptu, off-the-cuff 3-up, 3-down. I don't even think that was 3 and 3, but
it doesn't matter.
Hey, it's 2020. We're not sticking to the script here.
I totally put you on the spot there. Totally. But, I mean, it happens.
I like it.
It happens.
I like it.
You know what it's time for? It's time for a 7th inning stretch. That's one of my favorite that we've done so far, so I hope you guys are all ready. I haven't seen any comments down there on the Hall of the Very Good. You know why we're doing this, everybody, is because when you go and you have these arguments or you see these comments on these baseball pages and they're trying to make the case for someone being a Hall of Famer and they say, he's not a Hall of Famer. Maybe Hall of the Very Good, but no Hall of Famer. So we totally eliminated all of the guys that the cases can absolutely be made for. So you're not going to see Fred McGriff. Right? You're not going to see Fred McGriff here. Fred McGriff should be in Cooperstown. You know what? The official home of the Hall of the Very Good is in Utica, New York. As of tonight, as of our first induction. You know why it's in Utica, New York? Because that's almost to Cooperstown. And that's the Hall of the Very Good.
Yeah, home of Andy Van Slyke and Mark Lemke.
It's time for the 7th inning stretch.
The 7th inning stretch. We're not going to rank anything tonight. We're just going to do the first official induction into the Hall of the Very Good. I'm going to let SPG start it off. Who had an underrated but awesome career, SPG?
We talked about this a little bit before the show started, and I wanted to find one that goes way, way back. So we are going to go way back to the 1800s, just after old Hoss Radbourn retired. Jimmy Ryan played for the Chicago Cubs. He was an outfielder. Jimmy Ryan ended up, he had over 2,500 hits, a career batting average over 300. He batted .308, over 1,000 RBI, 419 stolen bases, a career OPS of 820. It's pretty good, for an outfielder from the 1800s that steals a lot of bases. So I'm going to go with Jimmy Ryan, a 5'9", 162-pound outfielder that played for the Chicago Cubs, finished his career with Washington, ended up playing 18 years in the majors, and he did lead the league in hits, doubles. He even led the league in home runs at one point. You might hear the number 118 home runs, and yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot. I'm talking 1800s here. We're talking 20 years before Babe Ruth stepped foot on a Major League Baseball diamond. That's pretty darn impressive for how the game was back then. And most of those were probably inside the park, home runs, based on his 419 stolen bases. But still, Jimmy Ryan, it's a name that stands out. And I did a little bit of research to kind of come up with, like I said, a very, very old school baseball name that is not in the Hall of Fame. And I thought that was a pretty good fit. So we're going to go with Jimmy Ryan is inducted into the Hall of... That's good. Pretty good, right?
Jim Ryan, welcome to Utica. I'm going to start it off with who I believe is the class of this first induction class. I am of the school of thought that this man should be in Cooperstown. But ironically, he fell off the ballot after one shot. We can't revisit this guy. It's not a guy that, after 6, 7, 8 years on the ballot, maybe the ballot was crowded, but we didn't get a chance to go back and take a look, like Larry Walker, somebody like that, Mike Messina. We didn't get a chance to go take a look at this guy because he fell off the ballot.
Right, Edgar Martinez, you can go on and on.
68.4 career WAR, and if you're familiar with WAR, you would know that a 60 WAR player is right around Hall of Fame average. 60 WAR puts you in the conversation. He's 68.4 wins above replacement. 1,528 runs scored, which puts him inside the top 60 all time. And I know that doesn't seem like it's a big number, but it's congested with runs scored. That's not the best compiling stat to use in terms of benchmark, right? But 1,500 runs scored. 622 stolen bases. Had some years that were just off the charts good. He was the number one fantasy pick.
And we talked about Lou Brock at the beginning of the show. Lou Brock's total was in the 900s, and he was the all-time leader in stolen bases before Rickey Henderson, just the most prolific base stealer that any of us could have ever imagined came into the league. So to put that in perspective, that is really, really good.
70 steals in 93, 325. 185 hits, 116 runs scored. 105 runs in 94. Strike short in year, he scored 105 runs. On pace to probably 180 runs that year. We're talking about Kenny Lofton. 4 Gold Glove awards, 6-time All-Star. Kenny Lofton. Literally, this guy was a top 3 or 4 pick in every fantasy draft from like 93 to 2000. you talk about 10-year peak. This guy's 10-year peak was awesome as a leadoff guy. And he fell off the ballot. We can't even revisit Kenny Lofton 10 years after he's retired or 15 years after he's retired. We can't do it. He fell off the ballot. But go look up the numbers. In terms of leadoff guys, that 10-year peak is as good as anyone. So Kenny Lofton, the Hall of the Very Good. Welcome to Utica. Kenny Lofton. Who you got?
I like it, and that is an awesome one. Kenny Lofton was one of my favorite players in the early to mid-'90s. Obviously many Yankees are on that list, but as far as non-Yankee players went, Kenny Lofton was one of my favorite players, and he was so fun to watch. It's a darn shame that he fell off the ballot after 1 year, because he certainly deserved better than that. Not saying he's a Hall of Famer.
Exactly.
But he sure as heck deserved
more than
1 year on the ballot. All right, I'm going to go with a man who held, which was once considered maybe the greatest or the most revered, I'll say, record in sports, and that's Roger Maris.
Oh, outstanding.
Roger Maris,
good choice,
who had broken Babe Ruth's record in 1961 with his 61 home runs at the time and became the single-season home run king up until Mark McGwire and then Barry Bonds eventually broke those records. We won't get into that. Those guys also not in the Hall of Fame, but for much different reasons. But Roger Maris, he won 2 MVPs. 275 career home runs. Yeah, he didn't get to a magical 300 or, above that to these.
No, he had 100 of them in 2 years, though.
Yeah.
100 of those were in 2 years.
He only played 12 years,
yep.
And many of those seasons were limited by injury. I'm looking at those numbers right now, and I see right off the bat, there's 2-3 seasons where he only played half the season or less. To put up 275 home runs in 12 years, and also he had 141 RBI in that season where he put up 61 home runs. Also led the league in RBIs the year prior to that with 112. Phenomenal numbers at his peak. There are not too many people, and we talk 10-year peak. If we narrow that down to like a 3-year peak, which is obviously not Hall of Fame worthy, which is why we're sitting here talking about Roger Maris, there's not too many players out there that you will find that had a better 2 or 3 years consecutively than Roger Maris. So I am inducting Roger Maris into the Hall of the That's Pretty Good, right?
Roger Maris, welcome to Utica. All right, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to come a little more current. And I'm going to throw a name out there that everybody's going to remember this guy. Nobody's ever going to talk about this guy for Cooperstown. Yet here he sits after an 18-year career, a .283 lifetime hitter, 1,100 runs scored, 1,400 RBIs, a lifetime OBP of 341.
We should clarify, too, not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
This is not in order.
No, yeah,
we're not ranking a top 7. We are giving you 7. This is a class.
This is just the induction ceremony. That's it. 386 home runs, Silver Slugger Award, 3-time All-Star. I know that's not a whole lot, but it's a crowded position. He played third base from 1998 to 2015, so he's a little more current. I'm talking about Aramis Ramirez. Aramis Ramirez put up some numbers from 2001 to 2012, his 10-year peak, that rivaled any third baseman maybe in history. He's a home run machine, 34, 18, 27, 36, 31, 38, 26, 27. 100 RBIs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Pittsburgh, the Chicago Cubs, and the Milwaukee Brewers. Aramis Ramirez, 386 home runs and 1,400 RBIs. That's a pretty damn good career. Completely and totally under the radar. Never got a chance to go to Cooperstown, but Aramis Ramirez Welcome to the Hall of the Very Good. Welcome to Utica. Aramis Ramirez. Almost to Cooperstown. Who you got, SPG?
Go with an outfielder that played for the Montreal Expos, played for the Houston Astros, the Chicago Cubs, and he finished his career with the New York Mets, played for a couple other teams mixed in here and there. He's got 332 career home runs, 1,287 RBIs. His career batting average is 303. His career OPS is 885 over the 17-year career. Pretty impressive. Stole 37 bases mixed in there. 106 bases. Was caught stealing 37 times. So you're looking at a guy who had 332 home runs, almost 1,300 RBIs, over 100 stolen bases, a 300 batting average, and an OPS that was creeping up on 900 over the course of his 17-year career. He also missed a couple full seasons due to injuries. And that's Moises Alou.
Oh, I love it.
Moises Alou.
Love it.
A baseball family legacy, the Alou family.
Moises Alou had the quietest approach at the plate I have ever seen. There was literally no motion in that. There was no bat sway. There was nothing. Nothing. He was a fun hitter to watch. Probably his most infamous moment.
I was going to say, I will never forget.
If not his most famous moment, is he is the one that famously called out Steve Bartman down the right field line for interfering with that foul ball that perhaps cost the Cubs a World Series run. That is year.
Unfortunately, is the first thing that pops in my mind when I hear Moises Alou's name. And it's not fair.
No.
Because he had a heck of a career.
Awesome career.
It just happened to be just an insane, unbelievable moment with him standing there on the field, right at the wall, pointing up just in disbelief that Steve Bartman reached out and interfered with the play, and the rest is history. We don't need to rehash that. But Moises Alou's career was very, very good. Borderline Hall of Fame.
Borderline, yes. I'm looking at these numbers here. I'm looking at this 10-year peak here. He's got years of 339, 22, and 98. I mean, those are – you don't just go out and do that over the course of 17 years if you're not really good at the game.
His career slugging was .516 in 17 years. That is pretty darn impressive.
It's pretty awesome.
Moises Alou.
No gloves.
Right.
Real quiet. Tons of pine tar on that bat.
Yeah, there were legends that he used to
pine tar.
That he used to urinate on his hands for some reason.
Correct. That is correct. Pine tar on his hands. But Moises Alou, welcome to the Hall of the Very Good, and welcome to Utica.
That's pretty good, right?
Pretty good. All right. Let's kick it back to the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Into the 2000s with the Arizona Diamondbacks. There's a little bit of a clue. We're talking about another guy. Ended his career at .303. Slightly higher on base percentage at .383. 1,146 RBIs, 1,179 runs scored. Only 173 home runs. Wasn't known as a home run hitter. But 2,445 hits gets you pretty close to the conversation for Cooperstown. He's a 4-time Gold Glove winner, 3-time All-Star, and he won the 2001 World Series with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He is MLB Network's own Mark Grace. That's a guy, when I was a kid, that was an All-Star. That's just the way you equate it. Him and Ryne Sandberg on the right-hand side of that infield, that was an All-Star. So when Ryne Sandberg gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, a part of your childhood almost sits there and looks like, hey, what about Mark Grace? Yeah. you just, they're like 1 and 1A. But Mark Grace being a first baseman and Ryne Sandberg being a second baseman, he separates himself from his peers, and Mark Grace kind of gets lost in the shuffle because that's a power position. But a 300 lifetime batting average over the course of 16 years, not easy to do. but a 383 on-base percentage, 1,100 RBIs. It's a pretty damn stellar career. So Mark Grace, welcome to the Hall of the Very Good, and welcome to Utica, Mark Grace.
I'm going to go for our final nominee, our final inductee into the Hall of the Very Good. I'm going to go with Matt Williams. Matt Williams finished his 17-year career with 378 home runs, a 268 batting average, 805 OPS. At his peak, that's another guy, 94 with San Francisco. Led the league in home runs. Also led the league in RBIs at one point.
94 cost Matt Williams an opportunity where he had a couple of years in a row where he had this, it seemingly he was on, him and Mark McGuire were the ones that were going to threaten our other inductee, Roger Maris's standing record of 61 home runs. Matt Williams had 30 at the break.
He hit a home run per 10 at-bats, every 10 at-bats that season. You figure, a normal season of, 500 to 600, he's looking at 50, 60 home runs that year. And I do remember that. And I remember what a fiery guy, too. Like, he knew how to get under people's skin, and he knew how to, really kind of be a thorn in the side of his opponents, not just with the play, but just with the way he carried himself. He was a pain in the ass for his opponents to play against. And he manages, too. He's been a manager. Phenomenal career, not Hall of Fame worthy, but very, very good. Matt Williams, one of the most feared hitters in the game for a very, very short period of time in the early 90s, early to mid-90s. Spent most of his time with the San Francisco Giants. That's kind of where he was noted for. I remember some of the races that they had with the Atlanta Braves in those early days, and just hard-nosed, intense baseball between the Braves and the Giants back then. Played for Cleveland for a year and finished his career out with the Arizona Diamondbacks. 17 years, so pretty long career. Very, very good numbers. Matt Williams, welcome to the Hall of the Very Good.
Matt Williams. We got Dave checking in. Dave gave us his 7. 6 of them are great. 1 I don't agree with. Let's go over them. Charlie Keller, Don Baylor.
Don Baylor is a great one, Dave.
Yep,
I love that.
I do too. Louis Tiant, David Cohn, Lou Whitaker, Todd Helton, and Dwight Evans. Can you guess which one I don't agree with? SPG.
Dwight Evans.
No, I agree with it. Hall of the Very Good.
David Cohn.
Agree with that one too. Todd Helton. I don't agree with that one at all. Not one bit. 2,519 hits, a 316 career batting average, 1,400 runs scored, a 414 lifetime OBP.
So you don't agree with it.
I don't agree with the Hall of the Very Good. I think Todd Helton is going to be knocking. I don't think he needs to land in Utica.
So you don't agree with it because you still think.
Because I think he's better.
Helton is a Hall of Famer.
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Fair enough.
414 on base percentage and 953 career OPS. And this isn't knocking Dave for having him on his list at all, because by all means, yeah, he's in the Hall of the Very Good. He's in right now, but I think he's a Hall of Famer. I absolutely do. 1,400 RBIs, 1,400 runs scored, 2,500 hits, with 369 homers and a 953 career OPS. 4 times the Silver Slugger, 5-time Gold Glove, or 3-time Gold Glove winner, a batting title. Don't give me the Colorado stuff. All right, the on-base percentage at 414 for your career. I don't care where you play. I don't care if you play at a Little League park. 414 on-base percentage over the course of a 17-year career. You're doing work. And he was a glove man. He was an awesome player. You
got to show yourself from camera love here, JP, for this.
I'm sorry. Again, I don't know why that keeps doing
I don't
that.
disagree with you on that. I was kind of surprised you mentioned Todd Helton, but that's pretty good reasoning for it, is that he might be too good for the Hall of the Very Good.
I think he's too good.
He might be.
I do. Lou Whitaker, another guy that, I agree, definitely Hall of the Very Good, but Alan Trammell's in the Hall of Fame. Lou Whitaker belongs there too. Just my opinion. You have to rank them against their era, against their peers, and against their position. And you can't rank them against anybody else. And maybe soon, as we talked about earlier in the show and earlier in the week, you and I in private, off camera, talked about having a segment devoted to the mythical thresholds that are these Hall of Fame numbers and what they exactly mean now in today's game, what the new numbers should be.
Recalculating
the thresholds.
Recalculate the thresholds. I
That's
like
it.
it. And we will do that.
And we're going to do that. We're going to do that soon. But also, we'll come up with some players that could be the challenges to those mythical thresholds. A la had Adam Dunn got to 500 home runs. Is he a Hall of Famer? If Nick Markakis gets to 3,000 hits with his one All-Star game.
We talked about what Bartolo Colon's overall career looks like.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. So if Nick Markakis gets to 3,000 hits, is he a Hall of Famer or does he challenge that threshold? We're going to talk about that on a later date. But that's it. That's our 7th inning stretch. Thank you everybody for your contributions to that. Good list, Dave. Very good list. Just don't agree with Todd Helton being in the Hall of Very Good because I think he's going to get his number called someday. That's it. Good job. Listen, I love that segment. I do. The Hall of the Very
That's
Good.
That's just the first class, too.
No, who the hell
I'm going to have to take note
is
of Dave's
ever
list.
going to talk about Aramis Ramirez?
Copy paste in Dave's
ever
list
again.
into my notes.
I mean,
now.
and I had another
for
ton
next
of
year's
guys.
Inductions.
Yo, I already got my ballot for next year. We're going to send out ballots next year. We're going to do the Hall of the Very Good. We'll send out ballots. You got to get 25% of the vote to get in. But like the Carlos Lees and Jermaine Dyes, I mean, go look at those numbers for those two guys. And there's a bunch of other guys out there. Jim Edmonds, Torrey Hunter, guys that made significant contributions to their era of the game, were considered amongst the best at their position for the whole time that they were in the league, and just don't get any love because they didn't hit those thresholds.
Dave mentioned a few other names, too, towards the beginning, and he also brought up Paul O'Neill and Vince Coleman.
Hey, Paul O'Neill's got a batting title.
I think those are
he might be a career 300 hitter,
great
Paul
suggestions as well. How about Nomar? You know, we talked about that a little bit before the show. Carlos Baerga, you know.
That's another guy.
I'm not looking at the stats, but I'm just kind of thinking of guys that were
Darryl Strawberry.
They were some of the best
Darryl
players
Strawberry
in the
was
game.
the man
Darryl Strawberry for a short period of time.
For 6 or 7 years, he was the most feared hitter in the league. I understand that that's not a Hall of Famer, but that's a Hall of the Very Good if it ever existed. 377 home runs or something like that for Darryl Strawberry, and in his time in the league was a very prolific hitter. Eric Davis and guys from that era especially, because that's where we grew up. But the Sparky Lyles, how about Sparky Lyles? He's got a Cy Young Award.
That's a good one.
Invented the closer position. I mean, that's a guy, Hall of the Very Good.
ERA in the 2s, I believe. High 2s.
You know, there's guys out there. Joe Nathan, another guy, because I was looking at closers for this list. We didn't give one, but Joe Nathan. Joe Nathan's a top 3 or 4 closer every year that he was a closer in Major League Baseball. He's a top 3 or 4, and you had guys like Billy Wagner, Trevor Hoffman, and Mariano Rivera ahead of him. But Joe Nathan right there. I mean, so many guys. All-stars over a very long period of time, but didn't hit those thresholds. Dale Murphy, a case can be made for Dale Murphy to be in the Hall of Fame, but Dale Murphy's a Hall of the Very Good for sure. Back-to-back MVPs and one of the superstars of the 80s.
He was one of the first names that came to mind when we started talking about this.
Correct. And the reason that I left him off,
the reason
I leave him off, and Steve Garvey and guys like that, even Bill Buckner.
And we left off Don Mattingly.
Yeah, because these are guys that I think should be in the Cooperstown anyway.
Right.
The 80s and 90s are extremely underrepresented. Extremely underrepresented.
Yeah, and we should be clear that our list here today that we went through, and a lot of the names we just mentioned, we're not saying they should be Hall of Famers.
No,
we
not
left
at all.
off the players that we think should be Hall of Famers that are not in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
We're talking about guys who were, pretty darn good.
Aramis Ramirez, 386 home runs, and we're never going to mention his name again. Kenny Lofton, 68.4 wins above replacement. third or fourth on the all-time stolen base list, maybe a little further down. We're 1,500 runs scored, and we're never going to mention his name again.
But Albert Bell.
Another guy. Albert Bell, if you look at those numbers, probably belongs in Cooperstown too. I know that there's that stigma there and everything like that, but he probably belongs in Cooperstown too. But Hall of the Very Good. We could go for days and days with this, but I really like it. So this is the inaugural class of the Hall of the Very Good. Welcome to Utica, guys. Almost to Cooperstown, but number one in our hearts. The Hall of the Very Good.
You can visit. It's a day trip. A very easy day trip.
Looking good out there, Johnny!
It's time for Out of the Baseline. I'm throwing one person out. It's nothing to do with baseball at all. At all. I don't want to throw anybody out of the baseline for baseball. Because I've thrown Manfred out so many damn times that he's never going to come back inside the baseline. Our oldest Chapman, a little chin music against the Tampa Bay Rays, gets suspended. Didn't hit anybody. Suspended. Not ejected. Didn't make contact with another player. Suspend him. Aaron Boone gets suspended. The incendiary comments made by Kevin Cash afterwards doesn't warrant more of a suspension than Aaron Boone. They got the same amount of a suspension. So, Manfred, you're out of here anyway. I'm not even going to waste my time anymore. But that pissed me off. Brushback pitches, man. You're suspending dudes for brushback pitches. You had a team, false equivalencies here. Dave's going to jump all over me, but this will be the last time I mention it. I promise. You had a team cheat their way to the World Series. No punishment. You've now had two instances.
And not only no punishment, they're overprotected.
Two instances this season of guys getting suspended without hitting someone. Joe Kelly and Aroldis Chapman. I just don't understand this
Pre-Joe Kelly
paradox. I don't. So, Rob Manfred, you're out of here. And the people who did the gender reveal in California.
Out of here.
Are you kidding me?
My God.
You set the state on fire so you could show people what kind of baby you were having. What happened to handing out the gum cigars? The pink or the blue gum? Hey, I'm having a boy. It's blue.
Or cutting a cake or something.
Something. You have to set 1,760 square miles of forest on fire to let everybody know you're having a girl?
I should not laugh about that, by the way. I'm only laughing at the just unbelievable stupidity that went into that scenario.
Gender reveal people in general.
You're out.
But the people in California.
You're out of the baseline.
Out of here. Get out. Get out. Nothing to do with baseball, but you want to know what grinds my gears? Gender reveals. And setting things on fire.
I only have one out of the baseline, and we've already kind of touched on it. We've talked about it. The Jennifer Lopez A-Rod circus surrounding the sale of the Mets. I don't need to go into any further detail, I don't think, that we already have. But the false promises made and the woe is me crying about I didn't get my baseball team. It really didn't sit well with me and a lot of people. Medi, we said it already. It's Medi. You're out of here, J-Lo, A-Rod ownership group. You're out of here.
You're out.
And I'm glad the sale of the Mets is finally nearing, hopefully, an end here. I guess you never know, though, with the Mets. You never do know.
That's it. That's out of the baseline.
Who do you got for tip of the cap? You
Tip
got
of the
any
cap.
tip of the caps?
I do. I have one tip of the cap. I'm going to keep it within the theme today. We talked about him earlier in the show, and I'm going to talk about him at the end of the show. Roberto Clementi, thank you for bringing that salsa flavor, that life, that music-driven motion that you brought to the game. The 3,000 hits and all the home runs and all the accolades and the World Series titles. It's all great. But thank you so much because I got to see Bernie Williams and I got to see Pudge Rodriguez and Carlos Beltran and Rafael Palmeiro and all of the other Puerto Rican players and Dominican players and all of the people that have made this game so important to me all of these years is because of guys like Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clementi. So happy Roberto Clementi Day, and
indeed,
tip of the cap.
And what an example he set. Tip of the cap to Roberto Clementi and everybody honoring him today. The things that we discussed with the Pittsburgh Pirates, what they're doing to continue his charitable work. Tip of the cap to Roberto Clementi. The only ones I had, again, Tom Seaver, Lou Brock. Thank you for what you did for the game of baseball on the field. Amazing stuff. Two of the all-time greats. Tip of the cap. That's all I got. I think that's a show, right?
That seems like
Tip
a
of the
show.
cap to Delta Lake Inn.
That's right.
Check out deltalakeinn.com. Indoor, outdoor dining. You can book your event there. You can have them cater your event wherever you want. Check them out. Connor's Way. Please do check out connorsway.com. The virtual walk-around this year runs from September 15th through September 22nd. You can chip in, do your 5 miles over the course of a week if you want to. Connorsway.com goes to a great cause and very much appreciated and honored to anybody that would be willing to contribute to that in the memory of Connor Linsky and to help the future of many students that are striving to be doctors and have other very similar goals that Connor had. Connorsway.com, please check it out. And that's our show, I think, JP.
One more tip of the cap. Tip of the cap to Disruption Network. Thank you to the D for providing us such a wonderful home to do the baseline. You can check them out and all their content at www.disruptionnetwork.net. Check them all out. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. We are everywhere, and you can see such good programming like EC Radio, No Time for Nonsense, Paranormal Activity. No, I don't know. Agent Paranormal, that's right. Agent Paranormal.
They do talk about paranormal activity.
All Puffed Up is the hockey show. They're in the midst of a playoff run here, too. So you can check out all sorts of good content here. Always active in our community is Disruption Network, and we are proud to be a part of the family. And that's it. That's episode 2, season 3. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. Tip of the cap to you guys. Until we see you in 2 weeks from now, you keep it inside the baseline. Peace.
We're out.